as possible. Have we been doing it? Well, they'll be here in a moment. Honestly, we'll be doing the introduction, and then Stephen Arkin will do.
Stephen Arkin and...
Well, let me get, I just want to... Nana?
I just want to say that Delphine, are you there?
Oh, she's okay. Oh, is she there already?
She's sitting down.
All right.
Bob, have you explained how this will go?
Yeah. This is going to be a lecture. The next event that Alain Robbe Grillet will be doing for the School of Humanities and the Poetry Center will be... Oh, okay. And slower? This isn't even the French part. We'll be reading tomorrow night at the Asian Art Museum in Golden Gate Park at 8 o'clock. That will be from a new work. The way this is going to be set up is Alain will be saying his essay, and not too awkwardly, I hope, in pieces, and Stephen Arkin will be then translating for you. Afterwards, if there's time, I hope there is, that we'll have questions. So I've asked Nanos Valeritis to introduce Alain Robbe Grillet to you. Nanos is a professor here both in creative writing and in comparative literature, and he has new work coming out. He's a poet, and has new work coming out on EG Press and also in January from City Lights. So, Nanos?
I am going to say a few words of introduction here. I know that most of you know already who Alain Robbe Grillet is, but this is just a short synopsis of his works and of his publications. So his works span some 35 years since the completion of a regicide in 49 and the publication of the Erasers in 53 and the autobiographical Mirror That Returns in 84, which is not his last work because he's got another novel that came out since.
Je crois qu'il faut parler plus fort.
Do you hear me? You don't? Okay, I'll shout. Of these works, 10 are novels. One is a collection of short texts, snapshots, 62. There's also a collection of articles and essays in a volume entitled For a New Novel, offering new ideas and defending the positions of his work as well as that of his friends in the group around the Édition de Minuit, Midnight Editions, among others, Marguerite Duras, Samuel Beckett, Claude Simon, Nathalie Sarraute, Michel Butor. But Alain Robbe Grillet is also a filmmaker. He has directed and written more than 6 or 7 films by now, and a screenplay of last year in Marienbad, directed by Alain René, also printed as a film novel, ciné-roman. The titles of the films are The Immortal, a poetic mystery story that takes place in Istanbul, also published as a film novel. The Trans-Europe Express, 67, a thriller. The Man Who Lies, 68, an East European spy thriller. Eden and After, a post-68, 1968 student revolt subject. Glissement progressif du plaisir, progressive slippings of pleasure, a gothic erotic murder mystery. Also also in ciné-roman form, in the film novel.
J'aime bien gothique, érotique.
N'est-ce pas? C'est pas mal, hein? His more recent novel, his more recent films are Play with Fire, which was inspired by an opera of Verdi, Il Trovatore, and The Beautiful Captive, La Belle Captive, which was inspired by a tableau of Magritte. As a novelist, critic, and filmmaker, he has participated in many symposiums on himself and the new novel, in which his interventions were often salutary, humorous, and insightful, facing the multitude of structuralist and post-structuralist erudite interpreters of his works. As the inventor, or almost, of the new novel, and one of its chief theoreticians and practitioners, he has to his credit 4 novels, each with a very powerful individual subject and emotional impact, as well as technically innovative. The Erasers, in 1953, a use of the Oedipus myth transposed as a modern mystery detective story, interspersed with clues, objects, images, etc. The Voyeur, 1955, the study of an amnesiac psychotic killer, plus geometric figures of the 8 symbol and the bicycle. Jealousy, 1957, the classical triangle narrated by an unseen husband with obsessively minute descriptions and recurring themes and sentences. In the Labyrinth, an evocation of a city wrapped in the gloom of winter and defeat. The text here is generated by a picture on the wall of the impersonal narrator's room. The movie script of Lost Year in Marienbad, also the ciné-roman film novel, 1963, the story is, in his words, of a persuasion where the hero tries to persuade a beautiful woman they have met before and she has promised to live with him. The next series of works, The House of Rendezvous, 65, Project for a Revolution in New York, 1970, Topology of a Phantom City, 1976, Souvenirs of the Golden Triangle, 1978, Gin, 1981, and finally Angélique, 1988, seem to have a common theme: the exploitation of a criminal, exotic, erotic pop underworld milieu in the fashion of mystery novels. They read as a fragmented but continuous work with frequently reappearing names, themes, violence, using, however, different places and times, and including the writing devices of earlier novels. Takeoffs of other genres, these are the devices. Time distortions, the neutral style, repetitions, abrupt transitions, changes of first to second and third person narratives, doubles, splitting of persons and scene stories within stories, formulaic sentences, obsessive phantasms, self-reflexivity of the writing as a process of itself, lucid and cryptic references to earlier works, thematic objects, and a veritable network of various fictional links. In his latest book, the autobiographical Mirror That Returns, he has revealed certain origins and sources of his works, as he did earlier about Raymond Roussel in For a New Novel. The influence of Sartre's Nausea and Camus's The Stranger, but mainly the insistent struggle with phantasms of his youth, which brings him closer to the surrealist as well as the mainly Breton background of his family. All this with disarming directness and simplicity. Yet, in spite of these confessions, he remains the man of many devices, a veritable Odysseus of the novel, for whom we have waited for 20 years, and here he is, at last among us. Bravo.
Bon, alors malheureusement, je vais parler français, n'est-ce pas? Et il va falloir tout traduire phrase par phrase.
Unfortunately, he's going to speak French, he says. So it's going to be necessary to translate it sentence by sentence.
Donc, on vient de vous dire que la dernière période de mes recherches littéraires comportait une part d'autobiographie.
Just been told that the last phase of his literary researches, his literary work, have been preoccupied with a kind of autobiographical search.
Et ça a causé une sorte de scandale littéraire.
Caused a kind of literary scandal.
Et il paraît que je n'aurais pas dû parler de mon autobiographie.
It seems as though he really shouldn't have talked about his autobiography, his own life.
Et ça m'a beaucoup étonné parce que, pourquoi?
That really shocked me for why not?
Depuis 30 ans ou 35 ans que j'écris des romans, ces romans ont beaucoup changé. Il y a eu des périodes comme ça, et si on oppose chaque livre à un autre livre, on va trouver déjà de très grandes différences.
For the 30 or 35 years that he's been writing novels, there have been a lot of changes. And if you set one book up against the other, you'll find that in fact many are opposed, many are different.
Il semble que ce changement-là était plus choquant.
It seems that this last change was the most shocking.
Et comme ce changement a été remarqué aussi chez d'autres écrivains du nouveau roman, Marguerite Duras écrivant L'amant, Nathalie Sarraute écrivant Enfance, il me semble que c'est un sujet de réflexion qui mérite notre attention.
And as this same kind of change was noticed among other practitioners, other writers of nouveau roman, namely Nathalie Sarraute, who published a book called Childhood, and Marguerite Duras, who published a book called L'amant, it seemed a subject worth thinking about out loud.
Pourquoi est-ce qu'un écrivain du nouveau roman n'a pas le droit de parler de sa vie personnelle alors que les autres écrivains ont le droit? C'est la question qui se pose comme ça.
Why doesn't a writer of nouveau roman have the right to explore his own life, his own experience, when other writers have that right? That's the question.
La première réponse, c'est probablement que une très grande méprise a été faite au sujet de mes premiers livres ou des premiers livres des autres écrivains du nouveau roman.
The first answer might be that there was a fair amount of contempt for Alain Robbe Grillet's early work and the other work of the writers of nouveau roman.
Sur ces livres qu'on vous a cités, Les Gommes, Le Voyeur, La Jalousie, les critiques ont tous dit que c'était une écriture objective.
In response to the early books that were cited in Nanos's introduction, Les Gommes, La Jalousie, critics pointed to a certain objectivity, objectivism.
Oui, c'est ça. C'est-à-dire que ils imaginaient que le récit n'était pas fait par un être humain, mais par une espèce d'appareil mécanique, photographique, impartial et neutre.
The critics responded as though the narrative hadn't been produced by a human being, but by some sort of objective writing machine.
Évidemment, une telle littérature ne serait probablement pas lisible.
Obviously, such a literature, something produced by a machine, probably wouldn't be readable.
Et effectivement, à l'époque, on ne m'a pas lu.
And effectively, no one read him at the time.
Et